One of the true strongholds of the woke agenda is Hollywood. Joe Rogan interviewed Tyler Fischer, a white comedian who is suing Hollywood for anti-white discrimination, and the exchange was fascinating. Take a look.
I had an acting agent who, whenever I would do stand, I used to host Mark Norman's show, Hot Soup, and all the agents would come, and every couple months, someone would go, "Why aren't you on SNL? We got to get you in Hollywood." And I'd go, "Well, sure, sign me. Send me. You need auditions." And so this guy saw him, and he brought me in. It was the biggest agency at the time, Abrams it was called, and I'm waiting around going, "What's going on? No auditions? Is SNL coming to check me out?" And he emails and he goes, "It's too tough out there for white guys." He kind of was like, "We're done here." The next day, fires me, removes me. Right? Well, no, the next day. It was soon after, removed me from the roster. I got an email. Some more time went by, and then another manager scouted me, brought me in. It was called AGI Entertainment, I think. And he goes, "Dude, you're a killer." He goes, "You got an acting resume?" He goes, "We're going to get you on Curb Your Enthusiasm." And I was like, okay, maybe this is finally somebody who's got the balls to fight this. Months go by. He calls me and he goes, "We hit a snag." He said, we can't have any more white guys, or we're not hiring white guys. We're not representing white guys." And I just was like, what the f is going on? How could you say that? And I go, "Is it company policy?" And he goes, "Yeah."
So I know that video was a little long-winded, but I wanted to show it to emphasize just one of the examples of anti-white discrimination that's going on in America suddenly now. Again, I'm old enough to know at this point, and I know many people out there are older than me, to know that for a while there, like in the early 2000s, racial tension started going much lower. And then, of course, in 2012, Obama started really stoking the fire. And then, of course, later we had George Floyd. And really since then, it has just not gotten better. Anti-white discrimination has gotten worse. And you can tell, by the way, that Tyler Fischer told that story that the man he was talking to on behalf of the agency, you can tell that this guy wasn't super into the anti-white racism either. Like, this was kind of a middle management dude. He wasn't super into it. But this is the thing. For most people, that intuitively feels wrong. You hear that even if you're not white and you're like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, I know that, for the last couple hundred years, white Americans have kind of been on top, but that still doesn't mean that we should be like, being racist to them. But the problem is that about 25% of the people who are the true progressives in America believe this crap, and the other 75% of us are unwilling to stand up for it, which is kind of, it's just the vibe I got from Tyler Fischer talking to Joe Rogan about this. I get the vibe that middle management guy wasn't particularly anti-white, but his superiors were. And it's not, again, he didn't believe that, but he was too afraid to speak up and actually make a difference. And I think that's true for like almost everybody in America, and it's a massive problem. What scares me the most of all about these stories is if you look at the polling, the progressive mob is bigger than you want to say. We kind of go out and we say, the majority is sensible. The majority may be sensible, but the majority is not the vast majority. Like, it might be, 55% of people that are pretty normal. It might even be 70%. But unfortunately, the numbers when you poll Americans show that about 25% are just pure blood progressives. And they believe some crazy stuff. Like, they truly believe that whites are evil and oppressive in today's age. Again, this isn't like a 2% problem. I'd like to say that it's just like 2% of the population is just crazy, but it's just not that way. It's actually a huge amount of people, and it's because of how systematic the left has been in taking over certain institutions like Hollywood, like the media, even business as well. I talk enough to crazies to know that there are plenty of people out there. And I know that you guys, you probably talk to them online or in person as well. The crazy part of their ideology as well is that they believe that they're owed something because their ancestors were wronged or that they suffered, which, newsflash, all of our ancestors have been wronged or suffered at some point. At some point, all of us have the same ancestors. They believe at the same time that not only were their ancestors wronged, but that you owe them something because your ancestors did something wrong to their ancestors, which is equally crazy because we had nothing to do with the actions of our ancestors. So the thing that progressives cannot accept is that that was in the past. I have nothing to do with my ancestors in terms of virtue, just like they don't have more virtue because their ancestors were oppressed. It's just, I'm not saying we shouldn't be connected to our ancestors. I think it's incredibly important for anybody, but that doesn't mean that the virtue of their actions makes us more or less virtuous, or that we should atone for the sins of our past generations rather than just acting good in the now. We don't need to bend the stick the other way. We can just be good right now on a whole level. So that was one story from a person, just one person on the receiving end. But there is another story this week that was really fascinating on the giving end. A journalist goes undercover and actually talks to a senior vice president at Disney, and they openly admit to anti-white discrimination. Before we get to that, I do want to talk about my new book, A New Cult, really quick. I had a really good time writing this. It's on Amazon right now. Go check it out. Again, it's called A New Cult, The Progressive Takeover of the West. I talk a lot about anti-white discrimination in Hollywood and how they were able to get that done and how they're going to keep doing it unless we stop them. So, a journalist went undercover with a Disney executive. His name is Michael Giordano, senior vice president, and asked him about anti-white discrimination at Disney. He did not know that he was being recorded, but we have a video of what he said. Take a look.
Certainly, there have been times where, there's no way we're hiring a white male person.
Just kind of unspoken.
There are times when it's spoken, but
How would they say it?
there's no way we're hiring a white male person. I've been at the company 11 years now, so I have friends in HR and I have friends in those divisions, and they're like, look, nobody else is going to tell you this, Mike, but they're not considering any white males for the job. They're just not. We wanted to hire somebody in the department a few years ago now who was half black, but didn't appear half black. And there was a creative executive who was like, we're not, that's not what's wrong. I'm guessing that there's acceptable code words and buzzwords that are used to explain what they're looking for. They might say something like, look, we're not looking at the usual suspects for this job. So it's not a legally actionable thing, but everybody knows what it means. I would guess that 30 to 35% of our top writers are gay, and so I think a lot of them lean into trans stories more than the average straight writer would.
Can we say we're surprised at this point? Also, what he says there about gay people at the very end, writing stories to be more gay, he doesn't doubt that a gay person would write a more gay story than a straight person, is absolutely correct. And we're seeing it right now with Star Wars. So I've never talked about this on the show, but I talk a lot about politics. But what I haven't talked about is that I'm a huge Star Wars fan as well. And obviously there's a show that's been out there that's getting a lot of contention. It's very controversial, called The Acolyte, which I haven't talked about until now. But this new show has gotten so much hate, and rightfully so. Let's just say it is the gay dumpster fire of Star Wars content. If you thought the sequels were bad, the sequels didn't have gay content in it, thank goodness, but the sequels were just awful pieces of entertainment, if you can call it that anyway. But that was just a dumpster fire. This is the gay dumpster fire of Star Wars content. It has absolutely everything. They have pronouns, they have they go by they, she, or whatever, I don't even know. Lesbian moms, gay Jedis. The lead actress and the director are both lesbian and said R2-D2 is a lesbian. And here's the thing, I'm fine with lesbian directors as well, but just leave that part out of it. That's how conservatives think. I think the left has this perception that conservatives are out here just hating on lesbians. We just hate lesbians. It's no, we just don't think about lesbians, and we don't want to think about lesbians all the time. So just leave it out. If you want to be a lesbian and be a Star Wars director, absolutely. Just stay to what George Lucas wanted Star Wars to be. If you want to play around a little bit, it's fine. I understand as a director you can't follow everyone completely, but no, you don't need to make R2-D2 lesbian.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
So the sequels are not canon, and R2-D2 being gay is not canon either. Anyways, it's easy to see that what this Disney executive is saying is actually happening in Disney. I think this interview, as well as The Acolyte coming out at the same time, even though The Acolyte you know, it hasn't had racial problems in the same way that it's been talking about LGBTQ issues. And then obviously this video was more about racial things, but it's a good demonstration of not only are the management talking about it, but it's actually getting done. Like, they're making all the actors gay. They're making them all people of color, which, by the way, like I said, I don't care. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're black. Just cast good actors. Just cast good actors. Don't put quotas in there. And definitely, it's illegal to say that you're not going to hire white people. Anyone being discriminated against in such an open and blatant way has to sue the crap out of the company that's doing it. That's the bottom line. I mean, that's the most important thing with this. And this is what conservatives are getting better at. I mean, an example of something like this is the boycotts with Bud Light and Target. Conservatives have to fight back, and they have to use legal methods. And fortunately, for the most part, our justice system does a pretty good job. Obviously, Donald Trump being convicted recently is an exception. But even with that, there's a really high likelihood that when he appeals it, it's going to go away. Will it happen before the election? No, it probably won't. So it's still going to be ridiculous, sure. But I'm just saying that in the long run, I think this is a very effective strategy for conservatives to go after those woke companies. Don't just see it and be outraged by it. If it's affecting you, go out and sue the crap out of them, because it's the only way that we can fight back. I guess the other way as well is starting media companies, which is what people are out doing. So definitely supporting them as well is a move. But the left will very often accuse the right of being the hateful side. I'll end with this. This is the perfect example of how the left is hateful and discriminatory. It's not the right. The right just doesn't care. The average person, we just don't care. We don't care if the director of The Acolyte is gay. But what we do care about is when you specifically look in the camera and say, yeah, we can't hire white people. That's hateful. It's discriminatory. That is the left. It takes about 2 seconds of talking to a leftist to realize that they hate white men with everything they have. It is their whole ideology. It is the identity of a lot of them. That's why you see people screaming at the sky when Donald Trump gets elected. Hopefully we'll see more of that in November. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please go down below, comment, like, and subscribe, and watch another video.